Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Amanda Susahai, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this presentation and discussion on turning your data into valuable interactions that your customers expect. Today's presentation and demo will cover how you can leverage your data to know your customers better in real time in order to better engage them. Our speaker today is Stephen Noels, CTO of NGDATA. We're looking forward to an interactive session and encourage you all to submit your questions via the chat window at any time during the presentation. Stephen will answer your questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And we'll follow up with any of your unanswered questions that we're unable to get to via email after today's session. This webinar is also being recorded and we'll make it available on ngdata.com as well after today's presentation. And if you'd also like to have copies of today's slides, you may also request those via the chat window, directly requesting those to Stephen. And I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Amanda. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to have you here on this inaugural Lily 3.0 webinar, where, as Amanda already mentioned, we'll be talking about the abilities of using any customer data that you have within your company and turn that into the kind of interactions that your customers will appreciate you for. Let's first start with a more general thought, not so much about us as companies, but more as consumers. We're all accustomed to great service from great online companies such as Amazon and Google and the like, basically because we get a very personalized service from them at the right time, at the right location, a service which is most of the time very context aware. Context aware meaning we get the kind of information that we're interested in at that time that we are at most needing that kind of information. And ultimately, it's a challenge for most of companies out there who are trying to win the hearts of their customers to really get an actual up-to-date view of who their customers are, how they can work with them, what preferences and affinities these customers have, and to make sure to align the customer experience and the services that they are bringing forward to their customers as much as possible, aligned with that. So we're facing a spoiled, but happily spoiled customer crowd, and we're facing the challenge of sitting on mountains of data, or as a team which is often used, lakes of data, which are currently being accumulated, composed of click streams, composed of existing CRM data. But we have a great difficulty in navigating that data and making that into useful insights. Now, that on its own is an internal challenge, but we also find out that the customer is growing increasingly aware with the amount of disconnect that exists within companies. Disconnect between different marketing departments, or disconnect between the operational part of the company as well as the service part of the company. What you find out as a customer is that you are being bombarded with many different offers, services, service requests, many different things which are oftentimes being brought forward to you first across different channels, but also in a oftentimes very unorchestrated or uncoordinated way. You have different marketing departments or people responsible for managing different marketing channels, which are not aligned with each other. So they see these different channels basically as a highway to bring offers to you as a consumer. Now, if this happens in an uncoordinated way, then obviously you can imagine, and I'm sure that we've all been the victim of that, is that you will get duplicate offers. You will get the same offer across different channels, even if you have expressed in prior email or conversation or interaction with the company that you're not interested in either the use of such a channel as a company to interact with you, or that you're simply not interested in one specific kind of offers. The other thing is that many companies often fail at using feedback from these the fact that they've been offering making offers to customers. Every time an email is sent to someone with some kind of service or offer in it, it should be possible for your marketing or organization to make sure that it's a relevant email. So you have the aspect of targeting the right customer with the right message, but also making sure that there is a good follow-up and feedback around that. All of these activities are generating a lot of data. That amount of data that it becomes cumbersome to just store it, let alone process it. As much as we are a big data company at heart, and as much as we have technologies and technologists living and working these big data technologies, the aim for this presentation is to talk to you about some features and functionalities and the kind of processes which might be helpful for you to navigate these mountains of data. The goal of us as a company is to make sure that while we are powered by big data technology, all of that functionality and the benefits that go with the ability to navigate large amounts of data becomes invisible to the business user being the marketeer. And the end goal is basically to make sure that a customer has a lifelong, hopefully as long as possible, great relationship with you as a service provider, with you as a finance company, with you as a media company, with you as a telco provider, which are the industries that we are focusing on. We're giving you the ability to collect all sorts of data and make use of them to answer some really tough questions. To be able to find out what is of most interest for a customer at what time. That information becomes available for all channels that you're doing marketing with your customers on. That information becomes available in an operationalized way so that systems can actually connect to it, can listen to it, and can be triggered by it. And then ultimately, with the perspective of all the data that is available within your organization and additional information that is being collected, you will find out that you will be able to make much more relevant offers and to provide much more relevant service to the customer at the right time and the right location, not only in the what time of the day we are and where is the customer physically present, but more appropriately aligned with what are his needs, what are his expectations towards you as a service provider. And then ultimately, the end goal is obviously to have a happy customer, because I've been told that these are the kind of customers who stick the longest with you as a company. If we look at some of the tough questions that we're trying to answer with our offerings, I think most of them, they come across as fairly simple. However, what we found out with our existing customers and with many companies in the industry that we're talking to, these questions oftentimes appear to be very, very hard to answer. We have a great new product coming out today. We want to put that product in front of the right customer. What are those top 100 customers who might be most interested in it? What are the top 100 customers who are most likely to buy that product? We have an existing customer relationship with someone. He might be interested or have already acquired some of the available product portfolio. What if we're trying to upsell or cross-sell him? What are the top 3 products that he is likely to buy, not only dependent on where he is at and what were his latest interactions with the companies, but in general, compared with what people typically are doing when having a certain product or access to a certain part of the product portfolio already. Making sure that you can make an individualized offer to that person at the right time. Not only about offer and product, but also channel. The channel is becoming increasingly more important, and the right choice of the right channel is equally as important, of course. We see within banking for sure, but obviously media as well, that the aspect of having mobile applications to have people interact with you as a company is becoming very, very important. Now you want to make sure that you send those offers which are most appropriate for the mobile channel to those people who are most busy on the channel. You should be able to quickly select those people from your customer database. And then obviously the capability of fighting churn. Fighting churn, not when it's too late. You don't want to reanimate a dead patient. You want to make sure that you address somebody who's prone to be walking away from you as an organization, that you talk to him, that you engage him, that you come up with interesting interactions towards that person at right in time and long enough so that his intention to churn can be reverted. And these are, as we found out, surprisingly hard questions to ask, because not all of these questions are actually tied to the customer taking an initiative with you as an organization. Oftentimes, it needs to be based on a proactive way of thinking around a customer relationship. It's not when the customer is there and that he's complaining that you need to engage with your customer. It obviously always helps, but you have to make sure that you find out that he's prone to be complaining in time, due to reduced service utilization, due to negative comments on social media, that kind of input, and to make sure that you engage with that unhappy or possibly unhappy customer proactively rather than reactively. There's a number of challenges in doing this, regardless of technology. First of all, there is the ability to process lots of data, and I mean not so much the technical aspect, but combining a whole great variety of types of data and to do something useful with it. To do something useful, to make sure that the subscriptions that a certain customer has are residing in some information system, which also gives you access to what were his latest interactions with you as a company. Has he been visiting the website? Was he filling in a contact or a complaint form? Has he been just buying something with you? And making sure that you get that 360-degree comprehensive view of any kind of interaction and point of data that is available from the customer, about the customer within you as the organization. And there's a lot of data out there residing in a whole different, in a whole set of very different systems. So you want to make sure that you combine that data and that you're not drowned into some exercise of doing, finding out that single golden record or doing a massive master data management project. The other thing is that having access to all that data, having access to every individual interaction that somebody had with you as a company, you want to make sure that you're doing something useful with that. There's obviously great value and great virtue in analyzing all of that information and trying to come up with some post-fact analysis of, okay, we found out that people of that age are most interested in that kind of movie, or most likely to be signing up for this kind of loan proposal, which is kind of interesting to know, but post fact is only that. You want to make sure that the kind of analysis that you do is actually very pragmatical and helps you in being actionable towards marketing initiatives. Having all of that information available and having all of that information available and up to date at all times is really important, because, as I mentioned already, we want to move from a very campaign-oriented way of thinking. We have a product, we have a campaign, build up a target list, send something to the people, see how they send something to your customers and see how they react to it. Basically, you want to turn the cycle the other way around and have all of that up-to-date information about preferences, affinities, and the whole history of customer interaction with you when the customer approaches you, and when that because obviously at that moment he will be most interested in finding out whether you have the complete view of him as a person. Within Lily Tree, our customer experience solution platform, um, we have identified these as three important parts of our platform. First of all, we're going to listen to all sorts of data, customer data, product data, as well as interaction data. Then we're going to learn, we're going to build something out of this, and we call that the DNA. And the DNA will allow you then further on to execute upon this. We'll be obviously talking some more about what this DNA exactly is. But the end goal of this whole exercise is to make sure that you channeled all of the available data to build a single view of the customer. And we do realize it's a often used term, but we firmly believe that the big data technology as part of Lily will allow you to finally build that view, which is a view that is always up to date and which is composed of all the available data. And we found out that if you're able to tap into operational data, IVR data, call records, click streams, and you're able to tap into that data in real time, the view that you have of your customer, the more data that you're able to pull into, the more actual it will be, because typically the difficult data is the one which arrives with you in real time. And it's that completeness of view on the customer which will ultimately make a big difference when coming up with great targeting information and build up great, what we call actionable metrics about each customer. Now, how are we going to get there? The first stage in what Lily does is listening into data. A most important part of that is what we call interactions. And interactions are ultimately little telltale signs of the kind of behavior that a customer has around you as a service provider. That could be as simple as a click stream. It could be payment information. It could be calls which are being registered through your service desk. The goal ultimately of ingesting all of these interactions into Lily is, first of all, to have them available for further processing, but also to glue all the operational systems that you have already inside your organization, glue them together and bring the information that they contain about customer behavior into one single central place. We're going to see why the aspect of managing that information in a central place is so important a bit further down the presentation. Now, you will find out that these interactions and a click stream or a payment log, they often contain very technical data, timestamps and all these kind of more technical informations about what systems they have that have been providing this information. This is not the kind of interaction data which is very actionable for a marketer. Ultimately, he's not so much interested in the exact point in time that someone made a phone call or that somebody clicked on a website. He's more interested in what time of day was it? Was it the early morning? Was it late afternoon? Was it in work hours, or was when that person was supposed to be at home? So that's why we augment our ingested interactions and label them with all sorts of, let's say, more comprehensible, more comprehensive augmented information, so that ultimately that information can also be used to generate interesting insights on top of that. So from a single web click that we see here, we translate that into a type of interaction, but we also find out what section of the website this article was about and at what point in time in the late afternoon within business hours this person has been reading this article on some website. What you see is that we collect interactions from our customer across all the different channels, and we allow the end user to actually get an actual view on the latest interactions, so that when that person might actually call up and ends up in a service desk, the service desk is capable of looking at what were the last different types of interactions that our customer had with us as a company across all the different available data sources, so that you can engage into an interesting conversation with him or her. Now, we're not going to collect these interactions just to do some heavy analytical processing or showing how much of a single customer view we can build. The idea is that Lily supports you in building DNA. Now, DNA is a term we coined, which is a collection of metrics. It's metrics, that means it's measured, calculated, organized bits and pieces of information which are very specific and allow you to very specifically address each and every customer. Um, Samples of metrics could be the amount of purchases and the purchase amount that someone has been making per product category on a weekly basis, or the amount of customer activity that someone had across all the different channels on an hourly basis. It's a lot of very actionable, very marketing-oriented parameters that are stored and calculated for each and every individual user separately and are maintained continuously as long and as soon as new data is becoming available to Lily. A lot of our interactions are based on, a lot of our metrics are based on interactions, but metrics can also obviously be based on different types of calculations. For instance, we support the ability to use predictive models to do propensity scoring, excuse me, and a churn propensity score can be made into a metric as well. The benefit of metrics is that they are kept over time and that it's there where the true interesting data resides. In Lily, we have at this point more than 1,000 different metrics that are calculated about each and every customer, obviously dependent on the kind of data that is being made available to Lily, but with some clickstream, simple CRM data export, already many hundreds up to 1,000 of affinity, different metrics are being calculated automatically into Lily. Next, information that is important to properly engage with your customer is a good site on what he or she actually likes or prefers. There's two stages to this. We've learned so far, have we seen so far in the industry, for example, Amazon, for example, Google, they're great at building recommendation systems. That means that you are able to, based on shared behavior, find out that if somebody has been buying A, B, and C, somebody else has been buying A and B, that probably that second person might be interested in C as well. This is great, but only works on top of existing products and existing behavior. How are you going to use this kind of information if you're trying to introduce a new product? Then you will not only want to learn what are the preferences of someone on the product specific level, but also on the product category level. This person is in general more interested in news, or he's more interested in life insurance. Now, preferences, as much as they are product or category preferences, they tend to change quite quickly over time because they are related to the patterns that we all go through as customers ourselves. Affinities are based partly on preferences, but also based on our own modeling around that. Affinities are more longer term ranges of preferences. Basically, they're called affinities for a reason. And the big thing is that, well, preferences is typically a yes or no thing. You are interested in something or you're not interested in something. While as affinities can provide a more biased picture of someone, a more nuanced picture of someone. This is somebody who's interested in investment. He likes fast cars. He likes high-risk investment type products. He's eager to get on digital products, and it stays for that like quite some time, so that you don't necessarily need to target somebody who's specifically interested in one of the products or product categories that you have for offer, but that you can look into targeting broader groups of people. What usually was done using the more statical segmentation methods. The goal of the DNA is to make sure that end users, and we're talking about marketeers here, can very quickly and easily access all of this information and use it to navigate through a vast amount of customer records. So with Lily, we provide you with the UI, allowing you to access all of the different metrics, literally 1,000 of them, and put them on some nice visual interface so that you can use those to find out what are the most specific characteristics of someone, and to also compare customers with sets or segments. Due to the availability or the large number of metrics that are available within Lily, we tried really hard to make sure that they are organized along different types of marketing activities. Also, we recognize the fact that not every industry wants to keep the same kind of metrics about its users. So we made sure that you have a common set of metrics. Then we have a range of industry-specific ones. We got built-in metrics in Lily for media, for finance, and for the telco industry. And then obviously you can use the same mechanism and calculation engine to define and configure your own metrics. What is very important there is that these metrics are all managed in a central, organized way. So we know that a lot of organizations, they have departments where they might have a different view or opinion on well, a certain churn level, or even on how they quantify what kind of revenue they have, or what kind of value that they obtain from a specific customer. You want to make sure that these things are comparable, that these things are centrally managed, and that's exactly what Lily allows you to do, to make sure that there is no debate or discussion between departments on what is the kind of value that a given customer is contributing to the company. Even more important than having access to all of these metrics, which, as I repeated, probably say, are calculated in real time and are updated as soon as new interaction data is becoming available. Now, even more important is to see how these metrics evolve over time. To see if there's an upwards or positive trend, but also to find out if that trend is accelerating or decelerating. And that's exactly what we are providing you as a tool within Lily, that you not only have access to the individual metric, but also to the evolution of the metric over time. This is still a snapshot view, but we also give you access to all of the historical timeline views that you would expect for this kind of metrics information to be available. On the execute level, which is basically where Lily is going to interface with the outside facing marketing engines, email systems, or where target lists are being prepared to do a phone campaign or a service recall, that kind of things. That there obviously we want to make sure that the right information is made available to the right application. So all of the marketing execution systems get access to the lowest level of DNA metrics, and they can make use of these as if they are data residing with themselves. What we found out is that a lot of marketers within organizations, while they see the virtue in having a good segmentation of their population, and being able to quickly classify a new customer into one of 5 segments, we also find out that these segments are oftentimes looked into being very difficult to work with, or too broad as a group or classification, and that sometimes they just want to navigate and select sub-portions of the entire customer population very quickly and easily. That's why we provide them with the sets, and Lily sets are basically a very dynamic way of segmenting and organizing customers, but also tracking those groups over time to see if a group that you've defined yourself based on the available metrics, because that's what sets are. It's ultimately just a query using the metrics that are available on the individual level, that you can see that that set has been increasing in size or decreasing in size, or that, for instance, the average revenue for a certain group of users, like for instance we're seeing here, young basic new users or customers of ours, that the average revenue for this group has been increasing or hopefully not decreasing. So with sets, we allow you to basically dynamically segment depending on the kind of marketing action that you want to do, rather than to have a very static segmentation, which is not updated very often. With Lily, we want to support companies which want to transition from a campaign-based marketing approach towards an event-based marketing approach. You want to talk and engage your customer when it counts, when he's prone to walk away, when he's interested in something specifically, when there is a certain sharp observation to be made in his behavior. That's why we have alerts built into the system. Now, alerts allow you to keep track of certain metrics and to translate those and to configure some thresholds so that you get warned when a certain user or a group of users hits a certain threshold for a given metric. That information is obviously made available to your marketing execution system so that an email can be sent, or some immediate website personalization, for instance, can be triggered as well. Coming to that point, here's a little sample use case of the kind of application that you can build using Lily. So we have all the preferences that are being calculated about a given person in real time based on backend interactions, payment information, location data, web stream clicks, and so on and so forth. On the right-hand side, we have our website, which has some areas which can be personalized. And ultimately, the real-time availability of this information in Lily allows you at the point of displaying a certain web page to a user, allows you first of all to identify the user, to bring some additional context information, and bring that forward to Lily. Lily is going to support you in finding out what are these persons' most actual interests and drivers. What is, in terms of product preferences, the kind of things that he's mostly interested in, but also at the same time gives you access to all of the metrics of which the DNA is interested in, is composed of. That could be very mundane things like, here's his age. This is the total amount of revenue that we've already earned with this person. This is the kind of affinities that he has a certain score for. So that ultimately you can combine all of that information and use this to drive a very thorough, very nuanced and very subtle personalization of that web page, which is presented to the user. Mind you, it's not just recommendations, it's making use of all the available customer data, both residing in CRM systems, in offer management systems, as well as operational systems such as payment systems and clickstream data, all of that being combined to do great personalization of this website for a given user. Now, if we want to take a good look into what Lily is, where it's going to present the most value for you as a company, it's not by replacing any existing BI or data warehouse solution. We find out that we partner really well with existing data warehouses because we allow that data to be normative, but to have all of the customer-related data being pulled out of it and organized in a central repository of customer data, which is fed and maintained in Lily, but is also information being made available by Lily. The same targeting information or DNA can also be exposed to data warehouses in order to do deep dive analytics, to do very long-running analytical processing on it. We are there to be very fast in scoring and calculating metrics and having all of that data available in real time, while as they can be used as the archive, the living archive of customer information. What you also find out on the analytical side is that it's great to have a very, very refined predictive model to say this is a great customer to have, or watch out, this person is prone to churn, or this is the kind of upsell offer that is going to be sent. So good models, good predictive models are really important. And you can set up and configure these models inside Lily, and we have some built in as well. But what is even more important is all of the data that you present to these models. With Lily, you're able to operate a model on all of the data on all of your customers. And it's ultimately that fact that makes a lot of difference for you as a company. We're using that data, obviously, to do preference learning based on machine learning tactics. Other important things on the transactional side, as I mentioned already, Lily is not sitting there and waiting until you do a query and then it goes off and going to spend hours generating a report. No, it is actively calculating customer DNA in real time, having it available for you whenever you want it. So it's designed to be used in an operational and transactional context. On the strategic side, I think it's really important to see that Lily is a system designed to coexist with existing data management systems, with existing databases and data warehouses. We've got many successful implementations at this point where Lily works really well together with enterprise architecture, where data is being fed into Lily, data is being brought back out of Lily, but where the central view, the customer DNA, is kept within Lily because it's there where metrics are stored and tracked over time. It's there where trends are found out and patterns are distinguished, and it's there where the actionable targeting information is kept. Making sure that these metrics are centrally managed and configured allows you to be very objective on how you're going to engage with your customer and how you're going to report on your customer. So Lily allows you there to be a central place with no discussion on what value and what important data you have about your customer within the whole organization. Finishing up here, we believe that Lily allows you basically to do more with your data. Do more with your data than just using a data warehouse or BI system alone. First of all, by working on more data, supporting really up to exabytes and zettabytes of data, all of the data, including the operational data, process that and make use of it while doing predictive modeling, while doing scoring, while calculating metrics. The ability to act on data that is coming in, not in batches, not on a daily basis, but when it is relevant within the interaction you have with your customers. When the person is on your website, making sure that the next click is going to make is showing some personalized content, is showing an offer which is relevant to his current situation, his current interests, and whatever might be the most appropriate to extend the relationship with him. Not doing this post-fact, but doing this in real time is very, very important. So that maybe you don't know yet how to talk and engage with your customer up to the finest level, but building that customer DNA and keeping it and all the metrics and how they evolve over time, having a good view on that will allow you also to execute smarter and to make sure that maybe at this point you are able to understand the common queries and to respond to the common queries of your business. But at some point, you will be able to distinguish those facts which you might not know yet, to distinguish these patterns or relationships between different types of interactions or different types of users, just by making sure that you made a head start in working in a customer-centric way right from the start. And with that being presented, I will happily turn the floor over to Amanda and see if there are any questions in the audience.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Actually, we have quite a few questions that are coming in, so now I'll open it up to our first question here. This one's actually, what is the difference between Lily from NGDATA and tools like SAS?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, I think SAS is obviously a company which has great background in great deep dive analytical workbenches. Yeah, so it allows the data scientist to really work with the data and find out what are the interesting parameters which are defining customer behavior, which are predicting customer behavior. However, what Lily brings to the table is the ability to operationalize these models, operationalize these predictions, and to make sure that when somebody hits your website with some profile that you've been maintaining within Lily, with the score which is kept, which might the model for it might have been built outside of Lily within SAS, for instance, but that score being automatically updated based on the latest interaction that you had with the customer. So SAS is going to take the analytical view and be interesting to build a model with. Lily is going to make sure that that model becomes a living, breathing thing, so that you have a always up-to-date profile based on the latest data, but also have all of that data available to marketing execution systems, email systems, and so on, without having to wait for another batch run of analytics to be run by the end of the week, for instance. Okay.
Okay, great. Actually, I just wanted to say that I see a few people are raising their hands, and I was actually, if you guys don't mind, please submit your questions to the chat section and GoToMeeting. We'd like to make sure that we get to all of your questions within the allotted time. So Stephen, our second question is, does NGDATA provide access to marketing channels also, or just recommendations of optimal channels?
Well, this is the first in a series of webinars, so this is like a great question for the next webinar, where we're going to talk more in depth about the different use cases of customer DNA within different industries. The DNA is a set of metrics which contains a lot of different things or prescriptive things about a customer. Could be simple things as age, could be very advanced things as affinities, but in the middle obviously sits a wealth of different metrics which we would call interaction preferences, or counters, basically keeping track of how many times that somebody has been engaging with you as a company across channel A, channel B, channel C. So the idea is that it's a very multi-purpose set of metrics which could be used for building up as recommendations, could be used as general purpose targeting information, but also more exploratory or operational reporting on channel utilization by your customer, both in and outbound.
Okay, great. So here's another one for you, Stephen. Can you explain how Lily supports big data and what technology is used?
Okay, as we promised at the beginning, the goal was not to present a great deal of technology here. We think that based on big data technology that is being used inside Lilly, we've created a very practical approach and a very practical application that allows you to basically connect just a few sources and to get the DNA calculation up and running and to get some interesting metrics straight away from all of the customers that you're managing within Lilly. That being said, we cannot do this without having a full big data stack, and that's probably also something which is important to mention. Lilly does run within the Hadoop and HBase environment as an integral part of it. So that means that it can make use of all of the available big data technology, the aspect that these systems can typically scale out very easily, but just by adding boxes to a cluster, allowing you to store more data about customers and process that data into something useful, into real insights in real time, just by adding these boxes to a cluster. So technically, inside Lilly sits a Hadoop infrastructure, but it's all packaged and wrapped to make it business marketing user friendly.
Okay, great. We actually probably have time for about 2 more questions, so everyone please keep your questions coming in for the last one. So our next question I have here, so this attendee asks, there are so many companies out there making similar promises to NGDATA. What specifically sets NGDATA apart?
Well, I think I mentioned quite a few already. It's a lot of data. We can process it in real time. But I think I'll take a step back from technology here and tell you a bit about the background of our company. We've acquired a company a year ago, which basically was a a very classic BI consultancy firm who had been working in finance and media and in telco for many, many years. That company was stacked with people who knew the business of these specific industries really well. And basically, I think the DNA offering that we currently have within LilyTree really sets us apart in a very unique way. Uh, when you get Lily, you get a description of a data model, what we call the ingest data model, which is basically a very easy to adapt form of, okay, if you bring your data into Lily that way, which is a no-brains exercise for any kind of enterprise architect, you will get those scores, those metrics rolling out of it, which are relevant to marketeers working in your kind of organization just in a couple of weeks. What we found out with many of our competitors is that they're essentially frameworks and workbenches. You will need data scientists, you will need Hadoop MapReduce developers before you're able to get value out of your big data infrastructure, and then only after 6 to 8 months. With Lily, we've packed all of that knowledge about these specific industries and the kind of metrics which are relevant to marketers within these industries. We've packed all of that inside a product, so that you can get to market and make value out of this a lot faster.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephen. We actually have a lot of great questions coming in, so we're going to do 2 more. Our first of our last 2 here is, can you use Lily as a data exploration or visualization tool of behavior for your customer base on top of a big data platform?
Yes, I think we are specific about how we visualize that data, but we allow you basically to translate all of the interaction data and big data that you have about customers, to translate that in what we think is a very unique and very practical visualization. We call it a DNA. But underneath, all of the data is available technically speaking, and might be of interest for the audience as well, across a SQL-based interface, so that if you have any very specific visualization needs, you can easily connect your Tableau or your business object or any other visualization tool into Lily and build your own specific data visualization. We organize the data in a customer-centric way. We visualize it in a way that we feel might be compelling for a marketer in a marketing execution and actions oriented context, but all of the data is equally available as well through that SQL-based interface for deep dive analytical visualization, basically.
Okay, great. Okay, and our last question is Lily using its own proprietary big data?
No. Lily is built on standard Hadoop stacks. It's supported on on standard Hadoop stacks and makes use of Hadoop and HBase. Runs inside Hadoop and HBase. Makes use of the whole distributed architecture that is available there, and the true value sits in the components that we've added to do very fast metric calculation and the configuration mechanism around that to make sure that we come up with the real metrics that are those valuable metrics around that. You will not easily add that onto Hadoop, but it is added in Lily on top of a standard Hadoop distribution.